Welcome to another episode of the PLM Green Global Alliance. And this time the topic is new. We talk about design for sustainability. And I'm here joined by Erik Rieger, who is a partner of us in the design for sustainability topic on the Green Alliance. And with Matthew Sullivan, who is also working for Simpa and PLM Services, which is also a partner of us, but then more on the circular economy. But today we want to kick off Design for Sustainability with Erik and Matt. So Erik, please introduce yourself and let us know who you are and why we see you here.
Thank you, Jos. Thank you very much, Jos, also for the opportunity to take over the moderation of the theme Design for Sustainability. And if you know my history, basically, I'm very much passionate for design for sustainability. But let me drop a few words about my person. So number one is I'm engineer by heart. Basically, and I realized this year I'm celebrating my 30th anniversary about PLM. So I engaged with PLM about 30 years ago this year, when I joined at this point in time PTC and grew up with Wünsche. And just to tell you some anecdote from this week, I just returned from a customer workshop about establishing PLM and replacing PDM CAD-driven way. And I realized when returning that basically PLM is the foundation for sustainability. So otherwise, somehow we have the next level of establishing sustainable design by having PLM. This is my takeaway from last days.
Yeah, and 30 years ago, of course, we didn't think about sustainability.
Exactly. And now we have the foundation. Now we have the foundation for establishing sustainability. It would never be possible if we would have this CAD-centric view, but having reached this level right now, it's the right time to engage with it. And right now, I'm working for TTPSC, Transition Technology PSC Germany. I'm the expert for sustainability around PLM and very much dedicated to establish sustainability as early as possible. So we have our Eco PLM engagement. We're working with the customers, and it was this week when we discussed also establishing sustainable requirements in the ALM system. So, but I feel right now there's so much spirit in it and so much things to do. But also, I'm very much happy to talk with Matt. Basically, when we had the announcement about my moderation role in the future, Matt raised immediately his hand, and we had a quick call to each other and really recognized that we have the same passion. So,
okay, great. Yeah, so I'm curious, who is Matt? Matt, please introduce yourself.
No, I mean, you've probably heard the name Simpa before. Some of my colleagues have already been on the discussion. First off, thank you once again to both yourself, Jos, and you, Erik, for kind of hosting this discussion and kicking off the very important kind of working group, both in design for sustainability, but in the wider aspect of raising awareness with the PLM Green Global Alliance. So my career is a lot shorter so far than Erik's. I'm coming up to about 5 years now, with maybe four or so roughly with Simpa. I have been always based roughly around engineering, but kind of the digital side as well. So a mixture of the kind of programming development side, but also the engineering aspects as well, coming from a chemical engineer, as we previously talked.
As you mentioned, you grew up digitally. I think this is normal for your age. I mean, we still remember the analog times. But
exactly, yeah. I think seeing the transition in our day-to-day lives kind of sets the kind of expectations on what it should like in engineering as well, and for it to catch up. I think that's just key to how sustainability is going to come around. My interest in sustainability has come around since university. All my key projects I did was based around biofuels and sustainable aviation fuel. And then in work, I thought, having a look at LCA, there's such big potential here in PLM. And I look forward to kind of exploring that a bit more today and see what your thoughts are.
Okay, yeah, so we're happy to have you here. I mean, as you already noticed, we are the old generation, you are the new generation, and we have to build it together for the future. Erik, let me start with you. Why sustainability in the manufacturing industry? What is your drive?
So basically, Think about we have two hats basically wearing. One hat number one is I'm a normal consumer basically, and I realized for myself that in the meantime I transformed to looking at sustainability impact of products I'm purchasing. So I'm buying regional projects. So I realized I've basically adjusted to sustainable behavior in my private life. But then I thought how to move beyond this, how to have a more bigger impact on sustainability. And I thought, of course, pick it as early as possible. Think about the manufacturing phase, and even more if you think about sustainable manufacturing. I mean, you know, this 80-20 relationship where about 80% of sustainable impact is defined in the first 20%. So, of course, we should basically grab sustainability as early as possible and really think about investigating, involving, and establishing sustainable culture as early as possible. That's why I'm very much passionate for design for sustainability.
I think sustainability is kind of a natural continuation of where we are at the minute with manufacturing. And some people may think it's the kind of buzzwords along with AI and all that kind of thing, but at the heart of it, it's not just about the let's say the environmental aspects of it. Sustainability encompasses a lot more around that, and it's all about the longevity and the efficiency of all activities, not just about the kind of greener aspects of it. Of course, that's incredibly important, and this is why it's come around. But for those who may not always be as convinced, it doesn't just encompass the environmental aspects.
Yeah, right. But of course, maybe interesting to notice also with your colleagues from Simpa, when you talk to aerospace, that's one of the industries that has the most focus on sustainability, because this is the way to sustain in their business. Other consumer goods, for example, we still see a trend where it's not happening that fast, and the focus.
I think aviation's I guess, a tricky one in the sense that it's a relatively slow-moving industry due to there's quite a weight of regulations on top, but there's such a drive and a focus when you've seen the likes of Airbus and Boeing with their heavy investment in hydrogen and SAF. And it's a weird kind of collaboration between the two of how would you overcome these kind of slow, high inertia change processes whilst also developing brand new technologies that are going to come out.
Yeah, but Matt, that's a good point, because I think this week we learned that Airbus is putting this new aircraft program on hold because technology is not as far as it wouldn't be new to develop sustainable aircraft for the future, which I think is a good indication that we need to spend more and really invest more in understanding and preparing the right technology for sustainability, which again comes to design for sustainability. That's why my overall perception these days is basically we need to focus on understanding what's important for design and for manufacturing, so to have a clear picture and then basically drive sustainability changes for the future.
But from the other hand, I think, Matt, you say it's a slow-moving industry. I think the advantage of a slow-moving industry is that you have time to see what is happening. And I was impressed by your colleagues with the LCA methodology that they already implemented. I think regulations are there. And if you are in a slow-moving industry, you measure much more. You are much better in understanding what is happening than just hitting your numbers every quarter.
Yeah, exactly. And I think regulations are almost a blessing in disguise. There's something that adds to a designer's day-to-day work and can be quite an impact on that. But it's also a check and balance in the sense that it almost forces the industry to move along and keep developing in the right aspect, and not just think about the kind of profitability and unit production, but think about the wider aspects and help drive. It's kind of the starting point for driving that philosophical change in design. So things like digital product passport, again, something that has been widely talked about. It came into effect middle or so last year with the what's it called, the ESPR, Eco Design Directive, or the new name for it. And we're still seeing slowly that kind of propagation of, right, now we've got this in effect, let's spend some money on this, let's start actually developing it.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, I mean, I mentioned at the beginning my 30th anniversary, and if you look at technology changes, I mean, how much time it took for PLM to be established, and right now we are reaching the next level of sustainability. So that's basically right now my impressions. Right now we have a kind of expectation that everything is sustainable by tomorrow, but that's why it is a good example about talking about aerospace industry. It's about preparing and setting the foundation for the future, and not expecting everything is fixed and we have some quick and dirty solutions by tomorrow.
Yeah. And of course, regulations are there to create equal playing fields.
Yeah.
Are we still expecting an equal playing field the next 4 years? That's the big question.
Well, that is the big question. And honestly, I think that is very dependent on how the different players in the field approach the sustainability aspect. And often, I think some of the newer players around, some of the startups that are coming around, especially around the hydrogen and electric mobility space, we might see a more disruption in the market. Because it's a lot easier for them to start with a brand new product, for example, around hydrogen and electric, than it is for the likes of, let's say, larger companies to completely change into a new program from their existing methods. So it could be a very different space that we're seeing maybe 5-10 years from now.
Right. Yeah, and sustainability is a long-term program. I mean, you might have some shortcuts and some improvements, but you have to think about the long term. Erik?
Yeah, I mean, that's why I think we have agreement that that's a long-term running program. And when I was asking myself in the morning why I'm so much passionate investing in sustainability, I compared to buying stocks for the future. So basically, we are very much used to buy stocks from every company. And my investment in sustainability is buying stocks for the future, which means we to keep the long-term vision in mind. And we should be aware we're making errors in the past to sustainability, but we have to move it forward. That's why I'm so much happy that we have this community here, the joint interest, in particular in our area. I think it's not about commercial interests, it's having a common subject and move it together and exchanging information on a regular basis. That's critical.
Yeah, so we're here also because of the launch of the community of design for sustainability. And what are your plans, Erik?
Yeah, so basically, as I wrote in my initial introduction to DFS, basically, from my perception, we have to address 3 areas. It's about people, process, technology. While as of today, of course, we mostly think about technology. Do we have a material database? Do we have the right data in the right place? But as I learned from the customer perspective, at the same importance, we have to talk about the processes. That's why we looked at this requirement for sustainability features. And the third area is, of course, the people area, where we have to work and push forward for team, and we are working with the customer together. And it turns out that culture, a sustainable culture, is most important for them to think sustainable in the design. So that's why basically, of course, number one is to capture a kind of status where we are right now with DFS, or Design for Sustainability, to understand what are the requirements, what are the showstoppers today, and then basically to also listen to the manufacturing industry, what are the expected challenges they have to address in the future. So in terms of looking forward, I think very much together, bring everyone together about what is the demand, what is the technology we have available, and number 3 is about thinking about the processes, what are the need for action for the future. So number 1 is by capturing the current status. Number 2 is deriving the need for action. So what is it, what we need? Do we have more exchange and experience about material databases or change of processes or whatever? And then basically work together on having best practices, recommendations for the future for the manufacturing industry, how they establish long-term sustainability. So I would call it a kind of roadmap in all 3 areas.
And Matt, what is your interest in this Design for Sustainability community?
It's something that we've started looking at over the past year. It's something that our customers and the kind of industry is starting to look at, and it's becoming more and more prevalent. But in order to develop this in a reasonable time frame, and to ensure that there's not a fractured landscape, we need to have working groups like this to be able to openly discuss, define kind of common approaches. Obviously, it might be industry specific or sector specific, but having that open communication and sharing between not just aviation, inside aviation, but across what's happening in automotive, energy, and so on, is going to be essential. But there's so much to learn, and it's something that has been a struggle in engineering for. Let's say the siloed nature of engineering is one of the key problems in PLM, but it's not just across PLM; it's across sector as well. So having this open forum, I think, is going to be essential. Sorry, Erik?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm just bring me to the idea. So would you recommend that we have industry-specific discussion groups, aerospace, automotive discussion, or areas of focus, which we should address in the first place?
Yes, exactly. So having a kind of mixed group, but also a sector-specific group, I think very beneficial, because the kind of intricacies and the, let's say, the inertia in different industries is a lot more different. So you've got more flexibility, say, in the automotive industry, because you're producing hundreds of thousands of cars each year. In the aviation, you're producing a couple hundred, so it's a lot more slower. So you have a bit more flexibility, but it requires different thought patterns to be used.
Yeah, and I agree on that point, Matt, because if I'm just generalizing the industries, in aerospace, it's all about design. So that's where you spend most of your time. Where, for example, automotive, it's about the manufacturing process. They just want to shorten design to have as much of them rolling off the band. And then other industries, yeah, it's a mix. I mean, so sustainability. Do you have the time for that? I see in many manufacturing companies, the guys responsible for sustainability they're just checking the regulations afterwards and not upfront.
Yeah.
So having different discussion groups, I think, makes sense because of the topic of itself. You can still learn from each other if you get the time, and that's, I think, one of the challenges for engineers that work, for example, in consumer goods. Are they allowed to consider sustainability?
Yeah, I think you touched on two key points there. One was not just having the individual groups, but having a kind of central group as well to share cross-sector, because there's so much to learn. But also, what Erik, you mentioned earlier, one of the key points as well as people. And PLM, obviously, often when you talk about PLM, people think immediately of the softwares, ARA, Siemens, 3DX, but it's so much more about the strategy and the philosophy behind it. And this is what design for sustainability is. It's seeing the fact that sustainability is no different from optimizing for cost and for weight. It's just with different data. There are some more complexities around what you have to consider, but it's what we've been doing for the past 30 years or 40, 50 years. So having that mindset and ease in that transition to see it's just another vector to optimize, I think is going to be one of the key points.
Yeah, in fact, I'm coming back to my words about the fourth dimension. So I still insist to have sustainability, the fourth dimension of product development and predicting. That makes the key difference to our sustainable area, that we need to work to predict values and establish best practices around this. So, but listening to our discussion, it seems to that would be gather interests and contribute and requirements from different sectors, and then break it down and sharing experience, deriving basically best practices from it for people, process, and technology in all dimensions. So.
Yeah. So when I hear you mention the word predictions, Erik, I'm immediately think about the modeling, because you use models to predict things. How much are we in design for sustainability mature to model our design process? I think, of course, aerospace is one of the leading there, but what is your relation to modeling?
I can tell you my view. So basically, mechanical design traditionally is existing since about 100 years, something no one thought about sustainability. So right now, and we basically, if you ask a company about design cost, they know it immediately. And right now, we need to establish a training material. If you talk KI, basically, or AI, basically need to establish training material to basically better predict sustainability. And from various customer discussion, I know, of course, people lot of things. What is the sustainable impact if I take different number of parts, if I take different material? But it's always guessing right now. That's why in the long-term roadmap, I would assume right now it's about establishing training material learnings and to make this as a normal attitude, basically to predict sustainability. But let's be fair and honest. As of today, basically, we know the sustainable impact after design, but not before design. So that's why on the roadmap, the next challenge is to manage prediction of sustainable impact.
And I think linked to that is having the data sets and the data openness to be able to share. There's a lot more, let's say, requirement to share from manufacturers and suppliers on the openness of the data they're sharing, for example. Routes they're going down, different manufacturing routes, and it's going to be key in part of training. What is the best process for sharing that data, and building that kind of openness philosophy of why we need it and what kind of boundaries we should use it in. So again, it comes back to people, as you mentioned, training. Not just from a upskill our own people, but to upskill the whole industry as an ecosystem.
And one of the challenges I see is the bottom-up approach. There is a lot of enthusiasm, but there also need to be a top-down push to enable the change and to make the change. So we even need to educate on the higher level that it makes sense for the business.
Yes, but also learning curve, and basically there's also a lot of work to do to establish. So one of the customers I know where the board of directors is commissioned against sustainable impact, which is a good example, but I think that should be quite normal for the future, that commissioning is with respect to sustainable impact, not the master economy.
And I think what you mentioned about top-down and the bottom-up approach applies not just internally to a company, but across the sector as well. So from primes, we need to work with primes to start defining what their expectations are for the sustainability reporting. Often, a lot of the manufacturers and the suppliers are waiting on the kind of higher levels to lead the way and define exactly what they want. They're very hesitant to design philosophy if they're at the kind of the data collection whims of those who are receiving the data. So if they change their process or change the requirements, then that's a lost investment. So it's establishing across the whole supply chain of what is expected. And often that's just educating the top levels, the primes, the tier one, exactly they want.
Okay, so we discussed that the most important thing is education, top down and bottom up, also in the industries. And now, Erik, Matt, how should we progress? What should be our next actions?
So my proposal, what I will follow up right now is basically I'm very much glad to have you as brothers in crime, partners in crime for our sustainable subject. And now the next level is establishing the community. So within the next couple of weeks, I would like to establish a call with all interested groups in this area, coming from manufacturing industry, but also from the process consulting industry and software supply industry, establish a group, and then basically understand and listen to the manufacturing industry, what's the requirements, divide into sectors, have subgroups, and then basically start to work on best practices for design for sustainability in the midterm. So next action is establish the gathering call where we come together and of course have some fun, but also some interesting discussion, share experiences, and then drive from there requirements and best practices.
Okay, so this call for action for more members, what do you expect from those members? First of all, they need to have time. What is the expectation?
So that's basically from manufacturing industry, understand what are the challenges that they articulate, what are your challenges, is it acceptance of sustainability, is it technology which is missing, culture, so what are the challenge for manufacturing industry to really claim that they're sustainable and to move forward in this direction. Then, of course, match it to process consulting industry. Where are we right now? Are we really capable of fulfilling the demand for sustainable transformation? And then next one is then, of course, to talk to the IT vendors. What is it what you can provide to support the sustainable transformation?
And so it's really a win-win group. You learn and you share and you can benchmark your ideas with others.
Yeah. So that's why I'm so much enthusiastic about this community spirit and typical for PLM to work together and establish this common goal and vision.
Yeah, I think it's one of the key aspects of this group will be gathering to have an open discussion, worries about specific implementations or customer base, etc. It's to establish a key set of best practices, I think, is the end goal. And to start not just build a network internally, but start that communication going internal to the sector, and have hopefully spread that communication for those involved in the working group, but for the companies and sectors and industries that they represent, and hopefully spread this mindset.
The call for action is that everyone who is interested, go to the PLM Green Alliance webpage. You find Erik's contact details there. And yeah, as soon as possible, when we have a group, we will do kickoff session and discuss.
Stay tuned. Announcement will come along the next days.
Okay. Any other wise words, Erik, to close the session?
I'm very much looking forward. It's about investing in the future. It's a common investment. So coming back to my investment for the future, it's about buying shares for the future and looking that we drive the future together.
Okay. And Matt, you as the future?
I would say sustainability is already here as a concept. We just need to realize it. It's right around the corner. And we have such a good group of like-minded people, and the movement is just growing and growing.
With that, I thank you for this kickoff of the Design for Sustainability group, and look forward to our progress in the near future. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much, everyone.
Look forward.
Cheers. Bye.